My name is Hannah Parker, and I'm 29 years old. Boston winters are no joke. This morning, the icy winds were howling outside my window, brushing against the frosted glass like invisible hands trying to get in. Inside my small but cozy apartment in Beacon Hill, I sat at my neatly arranged desk, surrounded by the minimalist furniture I had carefully picked over the years. Everything was simple, practical, and peaceful. Exactly how I liked it. I took a slow sip from my favorite navy blue coffee mug, feeling the warmth run down my throat as I scanned the reports on my laptop. Today was going to be a big day at work. Being a senior strategy manager in one of the world's leading companies came with its pressures. Everyone respected my opinions, at least in meetings. What they didn't know, however, was that my real story ran much deeper than my title suggested. The city outside was slowly disappearing under a thin, elegant blanket of snow. The sidewalks, the cars, the old street lamps, everything was turning pure white, like a scene from a painting. For a moment, I let myself enjoy the view before my phone vibrated loudly against the wooden desk, pulling me back to reality. I glanced at the screen. Linda Parker, my mother's name, was flashing. I sighed, already guessing what this call was about. Steeling myself, I answered. "Good morning, Mom," I said as warmly as I could manage. "Hannah, good. You're awake," she said, her voice carrying that familiar edge that always made my stomach twist a little. "Today's Ella's special day. You haven't forgotten, have you?" I closed my eyes briefly, pressing my fingers against my temple. Of course, I hadn't forgotten. Today was the family gathering for my younger sister Ella's engagement celebration, an evening I had been mentally preparing myself for all week.
No, Mom.
"I remember," I replied calmly. "Be there by 6:30 sharp," she instructed. "And for heaven's sake, Hannah, wear something proper. None of those boring business suits you always wear. Something feminine for once." I forced a polite smile even though she couldn't see me. "Of course, Mom." We ended the call quickly. As I set the phone back down, my gaze shifted to the old framed photo sitting on the corner of my desk. It was of my father, smiling at me with the same gentle eyes I remembered from childhood. He had been gone for nearly 10 years, but his lessons, his hopes, and most of all, his secrets still lived inside me. Secrets my mother and Ella knew nothing about. Secrets that, very soon, would no longer be secrets at all. After finishing my last report, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the falling snow outside. My mind wasn't really on work anymore. It was already drifting toward tonight's gathering and the inevitable tension that came with it. I got up and walked toward my closet. It was time to find something feminine, as my mother so kindly put it. Pushing aside my favorite tailored blazers and simple dresses, I pulled out a deep sapphire blue dress I had bought months ago but never worn. It was elegant but understated, just like me. Maybe it would be good enough to meet her impossible standards. I slipped the dress onto my bed and went to the bathroom to freshen up. As I splashed cold water on my face, my phone buzzed again, vibrating against the nightstand. It was Daniel Reed, my fiancé. I quickly wiped my hands and answered. "Hey, Dan," I said, my voice softening for the first time all morning. "Hey, beautiful," he replied warmly. "Just checking in. How are you feeling about tonight?" I hesitated, meeting my own reflection in the mirror. "A little nervous," I admitted. "You know how Mom and Ella are. They'll probably criticize everything, my clothes, my career, my relationship, like always." Daniel chuckled softly. "Well, let them. You're incredible, Hannah. They're just too blind to see it." I smiled despite myself. His voice was always a comfort, a steady hand pulling me back when the world tried to shove me down.
Thanks, Dan. It helps hearing that.
"And remember," he added with a teasing note, "after tonight it's our turn. Our wedding. Our future. And I can't wait to start it with you." "Neither can I whispered, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I'll let you get ready," he said. "Call me if you need anything. I love you." "I love you too." I ended the call, feeling a bit stronger. With Daniel by my side, even from a distance, I could face anything, even an evening with my family. Pulling myself together, I finished getting dressed. The blue dress fit perfectly, modest yet graceful. I pinned my hair into a loose bun and added simple pearl earrings. No flashy jewelry, no unnecessary glamour.
That wasn't me.
By the time I was ready, the snow outside had thickened into soft, steady flurries. I grabbed my coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped into the cold. As I walked to my car, I promised myself, stay calm, stay strong. No matter what happens tonight. The Silver Willow restaurant glowed warmly in the distance, its windows lit with a soft, golden light. It looked welcoming from the outside, but I knew better. Tonight, the storm wouldn't just be outside. It was waiting for me inside those doors. The Silver Willow's grand entrance was lined with frosted trees, twinkling with tiny white lights. I paused just outside the heavy oak doors, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. Warmth wrapped around me immediately. The restaurant was beautiful, polished floors, soft piano music floating in the air, and tables dressed in white linen and crystal glasses. I spotted them right away. My mother, Linda, and my sister, Ella, were already seated at a private table near the large bay window. Both were dressed impeccably, as always. Linda's sharp eyes landed on me instantly. She gave me a quick, disapproving once-over, her expression unreadable. Ella, meanwhile, was all smiles and excitement, practically glowing in her stylish champagne-colored gown. I walked toward them, letting my heels click softly against the floor, each step measured and composed. "You're late," Linda said before I could even sit down. "It's only 6:32. I replied gently, sliding into my chair. 2 minutes isn't late. Linda sniffed, clearly unimpressed. "You could have at least worn a brighter color. That dress looks too serious. It's Ella's night, Hannah, not a business meeting." I simply smiled and unfolded my napkin onto my lap. I wasn't here to fight.
Not yet.
Ella leaned forward eagerly. "Did you hear? Michael's family is arriving soon. His father owns a chain of luxury hotels across the country. Their wedding gift alone might be bigger than most people's life savings," she gushed, her voice practically sparkling with excitement. "That's wonderful, Ella. Congratulations again," I said sincerely, though the sharp stab of comparison didn't go unnoticed. Ella was the golden child. Always had been. And tonight, she was the queen holding court. Before I could even glance at the menu, my mother's voice sliced through the air again. "You've been engaged too, haven't you?" Linda asked almost mockingly. "What does your fiancé do again? Some small startup company, right?" I kept my tone steady. "Daniel is the vice president at Redwood Technologies," I said. Not that she cared. She had already made up her mind long ago that he wasn't good enough. "I've never heard of it," Ella said with a delicate shrug, reaching for her champagne. "But Michael's father was just featured in Forbes magazine last month. Isn't that incredible?" "Yes," I said quietly, my fingers tightening slightly around my water glass. "That's very impressive." The conversation swirled around me like a storm. Every word, every glance, every smug smile. All small cuts meant to remind me of my place. The outsider. The quiet one. The one who never quite measured up. But what they didn't know was that tonight, they were standing on the edge of a truth that would shatter all their assumptions. They just didn't see it coming. Not yet. By the time the Harrison family, Ella's soon-to-be in-laws, arrived, the air around our table had already thickened with unspoken tension. Michael Harrison looked exactly how Ella had described him. Tall, polished, confident. Beside him, his parents, Robert and Victoria Harrison, exuded old money elegance. Victoria wore a pearl gray suit, and Robert carried himself with the easy authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms and empires. Ella jumped up excitedly, rushing to greet them. "Michael, you're finally here," she squealed, wrapping her arms around him. Linda stood and greeted them too, her smile polished to perfection. "This is my daughter, Hannah," Ella said casually, almost as if I were an afterthought. I rose from my seat and smiled politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Robert extended his hand, firm but friendly. "And what do you do, Hannah?" he asked, genuinely interested. Before I could answer, Linda cut in smoothly. "Oh, She worked somewhere in corporate, nothing major. I felt the blood rise in my cheeks but kept my face neutral. This wasn't the time. Not yet. I simply nodded and said, "It's a wonderful restaurant, isn't it?" skillfully steering the conversation away from me. A waiter appeared and poured champagne all around. Robert raised his glass. "To Ella and Michael, may your future be as bright as your love." Everyone clinked glasses, smiling. I joined them, silently, hoping the evening would stay civil. But I should have known better. As dinner was served, the conversation shifted to wedding plans. Ella, glowing with excitement, described every lavish detail: the ocean view venue, the 200-person guest list, the imported flowers, the live band. "We're planning something truly spectacular," Linda chimed in proudly. "And, of course, we'll contribute as much as we can." Victoria smiled graciously. "We're happy to help as well. It's a big day for both families." "It's going to be the wedding of the century." Ella beamed, practically bouncing in her chair. I offered another small smile and took a quiet sip of my wine, letting their excitement swirl around me. It wasn't jealousy I felt. It was something sadder, the growing realization that no matter how much I achieved, I would never be enough for them unless it came with glitter and grandstanding. But I stayed quiet, because tonight wasn't about me. At least, not yet. By the time the main course arrived, a beautifully plated roast duck with winter vegetables, the cracks in the evening's carefully staged perfection were starting to show. Linda had already emptied her second glass of wine, and her voice had taken on a sharper, louder edge. I could see Robert and Victoria exchanging polite but uneasy glances. Michael stared down at his plate, occasionally reaching for Ella's hand to calm her. I stayed silent, quietly cutting into my food, hoping to slip through the evening without drawing more fire. No such luck. "So, Hannah," Linda said suddenly, her voice just a little too loud, "I heard from Jennifer's mother that you got a promotion recently." I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "That's right," I said, setting it down carefully. "A little more responsibility." Linda's smile thinned into something almost predatory. "And a salary raise too, I assume?" There was a weighted pause at the table. I could feel everyone's eyes, the Harrisons, Ella, even Michael, flickering toward me. "This really isn't the time to discuss that," I said softly. "Why not?" Linda said, waving her hand dramatically. "We're family, aren't we?" Ella smirked into her champagne glass. The tension thickened, like the snow falling outside. I could practically hear the waitstaff whispering from the service station nearby. Linda leaned forward, her wine glass catching the light. "Ella's wedding is going to be a grand affair. It's only natural that everyone in the family contributes generously." There it was, the trap. I placed my fork down slowly, keeping my voice even. "Of course we all want Ella's day to be beautiful." Linda nodded vigorously. "Exactly. And that's why," she said, her voice rising even further, "I think it's only fair that you, Hannah, contribute $40,000 toward the wedding expenses." The words dropped like a bomb onto the table. $40,000. The Harrisons visibly stiffened. Michael's face flushed. Victoria blinked in surprise. Even Ella looked slightly embarrassed, though not enough to speak up. I sat frozen for a moment, stunned not by the amount, but by the brazen entitlement in my mother's tone, as if my entire existence was measured only by what I could provide for them. Slowly, I picked up my water glass, took a calm sip, and then placed it back down. Then I met Linda's expectant, demanding gaze. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said clearly, "but that's not going to happen." Dead silence. The kind of silence that seems to vacuum all the air out of the room. Linda's face hardened. Ella let out a tiny gasp of outrage. "You selfish little," Linda spat, starting to rise from her seat. And I knew, without a doubt, that things were about to explode. Linda shoved her chair back with a screech against the polished floor. All eyes in the restaurant turned toward us. Even the soft piano music in the background seemed to falter. "You stand there in your fancy dress, drinking expensive wine, and you can't even help your own sister?" Linda's voice cracked through the room, loud and ugly. Mother, please, I said quietly, trying to maintain some shred of dignity. This isn't the time or place for this. The hell it isn't, she snapped, her face flushed red, whether from wine or rage, I couldn't tell. You've always been selfish, Hannah. Always living in your own little world. Never doing anything for this family, unless it suits you. I heard a sharp intake of breath from somewhere, maybe from Victoria, maybe even from Ella, but no one moved. It was like the entire restaurant was frozen, holding its collective breath. And then it happened. Before I could react, Linda marched around the table, her heels clicking violently against the hardwood floor. She stopped right in front of me. For a split second, I truly believed she would calm down, that she would see reason. But instead, her hand came flying through the air with brutal, shocking force. Smack! The slap echoed around the room like a gunshot. My head snapped slightly to the side. My hand instinctively flew up to my burning cheek. I could feel the sting immediately, the heat rushing under my skin. Tears threatened the corners of my eyes, not from the physical pain, but from the raw humiliation. The disbelief that she would strike me, here, in public, in front of strangers, in front of Ella's future in-laws. A deep, gasping silence filled the room. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Michael half rose from his chair, looking horrified. Robert Harrison stood up completely, anger flashing across his normally composed face. Victoria reached toward Linda, as if to physically stop her from doing more. Ella just sat there, her mouth open in shock. My hand trembled against my face. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at my mother, this woman who was supposed to love me, and saw only rage, bitterness, and deep, gnawing entitlement. You, Linda spat, pointing her finger inches from my face, are a disgrace to this family. If your father were alive to see you now, he would be ashamed. The words hit harder than the slap. Something inside me, something that had been bruised and battered over the years, snapped into place. I lower my hand slowly, straighten my back, and for the first time in a long time, I looked my mother dead in the eye, not with fear, but with absolute, unshakable clarity. I didn't say a word right away. Instead, I calmly picked up my cloth napkin, dabbed the corner of my lip where I could still feel the sting, and folded it neatly on the table. I stood slowly, ignoring the hundreds of eyes burning holes into my back. Across the room, the entrance doors to the restaurant swung open. And like fate itself had been waiting for this moment, in walked Daniel, and with him, another woman in a dark navy suit, walking with quiet, commanding grace. It was Caroline Reed, Daniel's mother, and the CEO of Redwood Technologies. Daniel's eyes found mine immediately. His expression darkened when he saw my red, swollen cheek. He crossed the room toward me without hesitation, placing a protective hand on my back. "Are you okay?" he murmured. I nodded once, feeling the pressure of 1,000 emotions pressing against my chest. Caroline stepped forward too, her sharp, intelligent eyes sweeping over the entire scene. The frozen Harrisons, Ella looking pale, Linda still standing rigid and furious. "I'm Caroline Reed," she said calmly, introducing herself to the stunned room. Her voice was clear and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife through silk. "Daniel's mother. It's an honor to meet the Harrison family and, of course, Hannah's family as well." Linda blinked, slightly sobered by the realization of who was now standing in front of her. But Caroline wasn't finished. She turned her sharp gaze toward Linda and Ella. "I had a long conversation today with Hannah's colleagues and partners," Caroline said. "And I think, before any more insults are hurled, it's time everyone here learned the full truth about who exactly Hannah Parker is." My heart pounded in my chest, but I remained silent, letting Caroline speak for me. "Because she's not just some corporate employee," Caroline continued, her tone growing stronger. "In fact, she is the true heir and future CEO of Parker Global Enterprises." The room went dead silent. Linda's mouth fell open. Ella's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. Victoria Harrison's eyes widened in open shock. Robert Harrison leaned forward slightly, as if needing to hear it again to believe it. That's impossible, Linda said, her voice shaking now. Parker Global it's huge. It's worth billions. Yes, Caroline said coolly. And her father, George Parker, prepared Hannah for years, privately, to succeed him. Not you, not Ella. Only Hannah. I could see the blood drain from my mother's face. I didn't want to lead with my title. I finally said, speaking up for the first time, my voice calm and steady. I wanted to earn my place through hard work, not through privilege. I wanted to see if you would ever recognize me for who I am, not for what I could give you. The Harrisons sat back, stunned into silence. Even Ella couldn't summon a fake smile this time. You've judged me for being plain and ordinary. I continued, my words cutting clean and deep, when all along, I was building something real. Something lasting. Something my father would have been proud of. Linda's knees seemed to buckle slightly, and she sank into her chair, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. I didn't know, she whispered. No, I said quietly. You never bothered to ask. The silence at our table stretched painfully long. Ella sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Michael stared at her, his brow furrowed in something that looked very much like disappointment. Victoria Harrison was the first to break the silence. She turned toward me, her voice gentle but firm. Hannah, it's an honor to finally know who you truly are. You have nothing to prove to anyone here. Her words, filled with genuine respect, felt like a bomb against the rawness burning in my chest. Robert Harrison nodded. You're exactly the kind of person we're proud to welcome into our family, he said, casting a pointed glance at Ella, who squirmed under the weight of it. Linda finally found her voice, though it was shaky and small. I'm sorry, she said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. I treated you terribly. I let my pride and my foolishness blind me. She reached across the table, as if to take my hand. But I stepped back, gently but firmly. I forgive you, Mom, I said quietly. But forgiveness doesn't erase what happened tonight, or all the years before this. Linda's hand dropped helplessly into her lap. Her shoulders sagged under the invisible weight of her own mistakes. Ella finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Sister? I didn't know either. I never thought you were doing something so incredible. I looked at her, my once envied, once untouchable sister, now a young woman stripped of illusions. For the first time in years, I saw not my rival, but simply a lost girl, trying to find her way. You never asked, I said softly. You only judged. Ella swallowed hard, tears shining in her eyes. Michael reached out and gently placed a hand over hers. There was something final in his gesture, a silent warning, perhaps, that things would have to change if their relationship had any hope of surviving. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, steady and strong as ever. I turned toward him, finding comfort in the simple fact that while some relationships crumble, others endure and grow even stronger under pressure. I think we should leave, Daniel said quietly in my ear. I nodded. Turning back to the table, I addressed them one last time. I'm not contributing $40,000 to Ella's wedding, I said calmly. But I do wish you both, Ella, Michael, happiness and a future filled with real love and mutual respect. I could see Ella's face crumple slightly, but she nodded silently, accepting it. And Mom, I added, my voice soft but unwavering, if you want a relationship with me moving forward, it will have to be built on respect, not guilt, not money, not expectations. Linda buried her face in her hands, silently crying. Without another word, I turned, Daniel's arm protectively around my shoulders, and we walked out of the Silver Willow into the cold, crisp Boston night. Snow was still falling, a soft, endless white. But inside me, something heavy had lifted at last, something that had been weighing me down for far too long. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. 3 months later, the world looked very different. The bitter winter had melted into a soft, early spring, and with it, the bitterness that had once clung to my heart had begun to thaw as well. On a bright Saturday afternoon, in a small sunlit church just outside Boston, I stood hand in hand with Daniel, the man who had seen me, believed in me, and loved me when others only saw a shadow. I wore a simple ivory dress with delicate lace at the sleeves. Nothing grand, nothing extravagant, just something real, something that felt like me. Daniel looked effortlessly handsome in a classic navy suit, his smile steady and sure. The wooden pews were filled with the people who truly mattered, colleagues who had become friends, a few close mentors, and yes, even my mother and Ella. Linda sat quietly in the front row, her hands folded tightly together. There were still traces of regret in her eyes, but there was something else too, something new: respect. Beside her, Ella dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her face shining with genuine happiness as she watched me. I caught their eyes and smiled softly. Not everything broken can be perfectly repaired, but sometimes broken things can be stitched back together in new, stronger ways. The pastor's voice echoed gently through the small chapel, blessing our vows. As Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt the weight of the past fall away, replaced by something lighter, brighter, something pure. When the ceremony ended, we walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, into a future we had built ourselves, not through money, not through appearances, but through love, trust, and truth. Outside the church, the trees were budding with the first signs of spring. Tiny pink and white blossoms swayed in the soft breeze. Nature's quiet way of saying, new beginnings are possible. At the small reception afterward, while guests enjoyed simple but delicious food under strings of lights, Linda approached me, nervously twisting the edge of her sleeve. "Hannah," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful you gave me another chance." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the cold, commanding mother I had always feared. I saw a woman trying, clumsily and late, but still trying. I placed my hand gently on hers. "We can't change the past," I said, "but we can decide what comes next." Tears filled her eyes, but this time, they were different.
Softer. Cleaner.
Ella joined us, looping her arm through mine. "I'm starting business school next month," she said shyly. "I want to work for Michael's company, but properly. I want to earn it." I couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful, Ella. I'm proud of you." "Because of you," she whispered. For the first time, I believed her. 1 week later, I stood in a different kind of spotlight. This time, not in a church, but at the towering headquarters of Parker Global Enterprises, my father's dream, and now officially mine. The grand hall was filled with executives, partners, and employees. Flashes from cameras popped softly like distant fireworks as I stepped up to the stage. The golden plaque above me now read, "Hannah Parker, Chief Executive Officer." For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the weight of it settle over me. Not the burden, but the honor. I thought of my father, the long talks we had when I was still a teenager, the handwritten notes he had secretly left for me, the way he had believed in my potential when no one else even noticed. I thought of Daniel, smiling proudly in the front row, holding my hand through every storm. I thought even of my mother and Ella, sitting quietly at the back, humbled and changed by the truth that had shattered our old broken bonds and stitched something fragile but real in their place. Taking a deep breath, I began my speech. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I stand before you today not because of my name and not because of any privilege. I stand here because of perseverance, resilience, and a belief that real strength isn't inherited, it's built." A ripple of nods moved through the crowd. "My father once told me," I continued, "that true success is measured not by how high you climb, but by how many people you lift along the way. That is the legacy I promise to continue." As I finished, the hall erupted into warm, genuine applause. No staged smiles. No fake congratulations. Only real respect. Later that evening, Daniel and I walked hand in hand down the quiet streets of Boston, the the city lights glimmering above us like fallen stars. He squeezed my hand. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," I corrected with a smile. We stopped at a small bridge overlooking the frozen river, the city stretching out before us. The same city where I had once felt so invisible, and now I stood unshakable. I looked up at the stars and whispered softly, almost to myself, "Family can't be bought with money. Respect can't be demanded. It must be earned. And love, true love, is never about appearances." Daniel leaned down and kissed my forehead, and as we stood there together, the cold winter night wrapped around us like a promise that sometimes after the hardest seasons, new beginnings bloom, stronger, brighter, and more beautiful than anything you ever dared to imagine. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to like the video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories. Your support truly means a lot and helps us bring you even more inspiring content. See you in the next video.